and welcome to the show. I'm Tosh Taylor.
And I'm Jenna Morden, and we have a returning guest today, someone that we love having on the show, but we actually haven't for a little while. So this is a very, very fun day for us.
Yes, it's been a long time. The last time Sarah was here, she said it was when we were still filming in my basement, so times have changed.
And so have the needs of the community, so that is why we have Sarah Hardy-Walsh with us today. Welcome back.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
It is so fun to have you in the studio with us. Yes. And for people who've been with us all along, you will remember we've had Sarah on to talk about all things mothering and maternal health and all kinds of great discussions in the past. One of our most popular episodes, I think, ever, actually, about talking about that feeling you get when you're just like touched out. Like, oh my goodness, I keep babies on me all the time. People just need to give me space. And now our kids are older and I'm like, oh, it'd be so nice if they hugged me all the time again. But that's another topic. That's not what we're talking about today. We're sticking with the baby theme today.
Yes.
Because you've actually launched a fantastic new resource for the community. Tell us a little bit about your new network.
Absolutely, yeah. It's the Perinatal Wellbeing Network. It is really born out of two needs, I feel like. One from a provider and local business owner perspective of needing to feel well connected in our community in order to really support families well. And then a need from families, because when I'm in supporting a family, I'm usually in their home with them, with feeding support and that kind of thing. But other things are always coming up in that transition to mothering and that transition to parenthood beyond the type of services and support that I can provide. And as a business owner, I can make those individual connections, but that takes a lot of time and energy and resource on my part as I'm juggling all of those other things as a business owner. And so what the Perinatal Wellbeing Network is meant to provide is both for community-based healthcare providers, service providers like doulas and meal prep services and those kinds of things, and local business owners that really support and focus on supporting families from preconception through pregnancy into the postpartum, to connect all of those kind of business and practitioner resources, but then also be a place for families to land, to kind of root in and feel and engage with the kind of support that they need.
So right off the hop, what are some of the basic things that you noticed were missing?
From a family perspective?
Sure, yeah, let's start there.
I think it's just having a place to go to connect with everything that you need. You know, as a new parent, it's easy to hop on to Google and type something in, and it's really, a shot in the dark for what shows up on your page. And so I've had, over the years of my practice, I've had so many families say like, oh, why couldn't I find you sooner? Or why didn't I know about you sooner? And I think as a business owner, well, I feel like I'm doing all the things that I'm meant to do to connect with the people I need to connect with in the community. But there hasn't really been that central place for families to land to see what's available in their community and what types of supports are provided. For support people of those families to kind of come and say like, oh, have you tried this? Or can I get you a gift certificate for this service? Or, we think of baby registries, for example, as like items, right? Cribs and diapers and onesies and all that kind of thing. But like maybe your extended family and friends and colleagues could gather together and purchase a postpartum doula service for you, so you've got an extra pair of hands during that postpartum period, or some lactation support, or a couple of visits with a chiropractor or an osteopath or a naturopathic doctor, whatever it might be that would most support that family. So it's that the missing piece there is that one place to land. And I feel like for practitioners and new businesses and that sort of thing as well, that one place to land. When I first arrived in this area, part of my work was connecting with the different people that would not only support my business, but also that I could confidently refer families to. And there wasn't that central place for me to go to where everybody in this particular space is supporting families from that preconception care through pregnancy and afterwards. There's lots of general ones, which are fantastic, but nothing specific to this particular population.
I think that's one of the things that I find most exciting about you creating this network is that we're now at a place where the Moncton area is large enough. Not only is there a need from the family perspective, but there are enough businesses now to come together, enough service providers to do this, because 10, 12 years ago, it wasn't that you couldn't Google them, it was that you'd Google and you'd find everything and there was like 2.
Yeah. Yes. Oh yeah.
And
if you were lucky.
But like that community has been growing so much, especially over the past couple of years, I find.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's definitely been growing. And the other thing that I've noticed with the families that I work with here locally is that they're also very well connected with families out on the island and families down in Nova Scotia. And there's a lot of back and forth with the families, but now with what's happened over the past few years, we've also got services that have moved online virtually. So if there isn't a particular service right locally in your community, let's see if we can kind of reach out that little bit further, still within this kind of maritime community, and make sure that you're able to access the services that you're looking for.
I can imagine that there are some businesses that you're dealing with that didn't even realize that they're caring for women during their pregnancy, after pregnancy, that they could also be on this list, because sometimes that doesn't register, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And so yes, we think of immediately the healthcare providers that are very focused on this population, the like I said, the doulas that are working with folks prenatally and through labor and birth and postpartum. But one of the probably highest demand services I find postpartum families looking for is like a meal preparation and delivery service, or I want to say like a meal planning and preparation service. And so even for me, connecting with those services that are available locally that are going to offer families not only just the service of making their foods for them, making a few meals for them, but things that are, perhaps purchased locally from locally based businesses and farmers and organizations, foods that are really going to nutrify that family and like lift those parents' energies. We know how depleting that transition to parenthood can be, and juggling those kinds of things like getting really good food into our bodies can be a huge challenge.
Even still.
Live on time. Yes. But especially during that's a time, I think that's a time too when a lot of parents who maybe haven't put a lot of focus on those type of things, that's when it really kicks in your brain. You're like, oh, this isn't just my health anymore. This other human is relying on me. I need to do my best for all of us.
Yes, and a lot I found over the years in working with families at this stage of life that so much of the focus is on having a healthy pregnancy, which is absolutely so important, and focused on what is this labor and birth going to look like, and not so much on the weeks, months, years that follow that process and how well we're supported and how, who we have around us that's going to help us through. As humans, we're not built to parent in isolation. And so when we're really on our own, especially during this massive kind of transition into parenthood, that can be so stressful and depleting for families. So really bringing that community together to hold and support and see and hear what parents are needing and saying.
I think that too, it doesn't matter how many books you read, how many YouTube videos you watch, how many siblings you helped raise in your family. Nothing prepares you for all of a sudden you're caring for a tiny person, and everything that you've ever learned typically goes out the window, I think, because it's not a lie. Kids don't come with a manual. So you've got to figure out what's right.
Different.
Yes.
And what worked for, you have multiple children, what worked for one doesn't necessarily work for the other. You do have to constantly be looking for information and searching things. And
that's why we started the show.
Exactly. That's what this is all about.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
when we're searching for things and looking for things, I mean, the internet is a fantastic resource, but it's a bit of a black hole abyss that you leap into, right? And so to have a place to go where you know you've got, you know, some well-educated practitioners and some support people and local businesses that are really passionate about supporting this stage of life, whose businesses were probably born out of something that they experienced in that transition to parenthood. You know, it's just so nice to be able to have a reliable place to go so that you're not having to sift through all of the stuff. Is this going to be something that works for me? Is this not? Who can I ask? And this is why that Perinatal Wellbeing Network is there, because we're going to have the people there that you can ask.
Okay.
When you're talking about the network, let's kind of break this down a little bit for people. Is it, you know, we're talking about a place to go. Is this a physical place, the internet place? How does this all work from both the provider perspective and then the parents?
Absolutely. So, big vision that feels like it's growing by the minute.
We also know what that feels
Yes.
But what's envisioned currently is both an online space and local space. So an online space from the healthcare provider, service provider, business who's focused on that perinatal population perspective, an online space for all of those folks to connect, to create collaborations between their businesses and practices, to really create the type of connection that develops into really strong, really confident referrals to our clients and patients. A place where we can share resources, new research that's coming out, continuing education opportunities, you know, whether it be opportunities online or locally. So online, and then in-person piece for their in-person networking events, gathering together, meeting the humans behind those little square boxes that we see on screens. You know, and really getting to know them and continuing those connections and those collaborations. From the perspective of supporting families, for right now, envisioning primarily an online resource, a place that families can land to see, oh, these are the people in my community. This is what they do to support that transition into parenthood. You know, there's even ideas brewing around, like, can we create a gifting registry for families? So instead of going to, you know, the big shop that we register for things like those diapers and the cribs and all that kind of thing, how about we register for the services and supports that we might need during that postpartum time period, so that we're really feeling well supported and held through that time.
I also like that from a second, third, fourth child point. You know, like with the first baby, you tend to get most of the things that you need, right? Especially if you're having your kids in quick succession. So if people still want to get you gifts for the second baby, here's the things I wish I had with baby number one, and I could really use this time. You know, a massage for mom, or someone bringing you food. Even still, I will always get hung up on the food. Yeah, always. If I win the lottery, the chef is the one thing I need. But that is a wonderful resource. And then if you are able to find a location, being a place to connect moms and dads and even the babies, to have a place to for them to land and then get to know each other.
Yeah, absolutely.
Something that's missing these days too, I find.
Yeah.
I see a huge demand of people reaching out to Pickle Planet looking for places to go with little ones. You know, once you get into the toddler and older age, there are a lot more options, but for that very small stage, there are still very few options locally for places you can go, and there's some programs, but for things that are more of a drop-in, it's there's a lot of desire out there.
Yeah, and I feel like the other kind of side benefit that this kind of thing provides is it helps us see as a community where those spaces are, like what needs aren't being met. And for new folks coming into our community, new businesses being created, how could they potentially fill those gaps that we're seeing once we've brought all of these folks together?
we find, and I mean, this is how we get a lot of our guests, are parents who noticed something missing once they had their children. That's how Pickle Planet started. So, and it's been a long time since I've been out of the baby game, but I'm like, something that came to mind that I'm not sure still exists was like strolling mamas, right? Like being able to get outside, get some exercise at the same time, and baby can have a nap or what have you, and you're connecting with other people.
Absolutely.
So, being able to walk into that and going, okay, well, why isn't anybody doing this? How can I start that? I mean, like that's building connections on so many different levels.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And we are at that population spot now where people need someone to do it in such an organized fashion that you can Google it and find it, right? Things like that have happened a lot where in this community it's still been word of mouth, or like it's a group in the neighborhood has gone out and done it. But we are Canada's fastest growing region, and that means we need different types of services and a different way of connecting with people. And so I think that it's going to be very, very interesting. And if you're out there going, oh, I really wish there was, we'll make it happen.
Yes.
Make it happen. Now's the time.
Yes. And tell Sarah about it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Can you talk maybe a little bit about some of those gaps that you maybe are seeing of, as you're building this network, what still isn't here?
Oh my goodness.
Or what could there be more of?
So here is the tricky thing with not having the network so far, is that I might say right now something that's not available that actually is, that I don't even know about. So if that's the case and you're listening or you're watching, let me know. We want to know who are all of these community-based healthcare providers, service providers, businesses, makers that focus on that transition to parenthood and really supporting families to get what they need. I don't know if there's anything specific that we're missing, but maybe that we need more of. So from my perspective as a lactation consultant, I'm often referring families for body work to practitioners like osteopaths and craniosacral therapists and chiropractors and massage therapists and physiotherapists. But if it's more kind of related to feeding, I'm wanting to know who are the speech language pathologists, who are the occupational therapists, who are the dentists who have the knowledge and education and background to be doing release of, things like tongue ties and that kind of thing. So that's my perspective as a practitioner. When I'm in working with families, the needs I'm seeing, like I mentioned earlier, are like meal preparation and support in that area. Postpartum doula support and having that extra set of hands to, snuggle a baby and make a meal while mom has a nap, or, to pop in even for a couple of hours overnight and snuggle a baby while mom has a good rest at night. In that transition, I find a lot of families who are welcoming babies. Mom's feeling well supported when that baby first arrives, but after partner goes back to work or after visiting family returns home, then she's left all on her own. And so then what are the types of services that might be able to support her through that time period? After the past few years, we are in need so much more of increased mental health services for families during that transition. I mean, it's a need across the community for all aspects of life, but particularly and specifically for that perinatal time period as well.
I think a major thing that Jenna pointed out earlier is that we are the fastest growing region in the country, which means a lot of people have moved here leaving their families behind. Yes. So that is exactly it. Like, mom, dad, whomever comes and stays for a couple of weeks or a month if you're lucky. And then, it's okay. I'm in the thick of this all by myself. And I know from a conversation we'd had with a previous guest that we are lacking doulas, pregnancy doulas and postpartum doulas as well. So that is definitely something that should be looked into.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Sleep consultants. I'm trying to think of ways to fill the gaps here. Yeah. Who else have I figured we need? Yeah.
I think especially after the pandemic, what we're seeing is a lot of the programs that were in place haven't come back online, or they haven't really kind of ramped up to meet the demand again. So things like, swim time with babies and, those kind of drop-in play opportunities with babies and things where it's very much geared to a parent and an infant to come out. Those events that used to happen a lot years ago haven't come back up to where they were, and they should be even higher because we do have this huge influx of people. And the great thing is that people are moving here, but people are moving here to this growing region while we're still in the growing phase.
Yes.
And so there are a lot of things that people are coming from larger centers thinking we have because we're growing, and we're still in that growing pain phase for a lot of it.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so for even for families, if you're in that situation that you've arrived here and there's a service or a business that you feel like is missing, let's know about that too, so that those people who are out there and ready to start businesses or who are getting started or maybe coming into this area can say, yes, I can fill that gap. The other thing that just popped into my mind that's kind of outside the box when it comes to support for these families, but is support for our furry family members. There have been so many homes that I've visited for lactation support, where parents are saying like, oh, this poor dog, it hasn't been walked in days, or, whatever it happens to be. I had one family say the best shower gift I received was a gift certificate for a dog walking service, because now I don't have to worry about that happening for our family. So, if you're a business owner, thinking outside the box in that way and letting us know, like, how can you specifically serve and support families in that transition to parenthood to where we might not, obviously think of it. So I think of a doula, someone who's been trained to support families in that transition. I don't always think of a dog walker.
Of course
but
not.
It's someone who's going to provide a really, really valuable service to kind of take some of the extra, weight off of a parent's shoulders when it comes to getting all the things done that they need to get done during that time.
Well, and even to have that, like you say, you might not even think of it until you need it. Yes. But if there is, a network and there's places to go where you can see, oh, these services are available, then you're like, oh yeah, I hadn't thought that I'm going to need someone to help me walk the dog, or I'm going to need someone to come detail the car, because that's something that I used to be able to do for fun and I don't have the time for anymore. There's a lot of those services that I think are bubbling up in the community and do exist already, but to put the people together is very powerful, as we know.
Absolutely.
What about services for people prior to baby journey, for the families that are just thinking about getting into it? And for example, like in Toronto, you can find a fertility clinic, in every corner. But here in the Maritimes, they are few and far between.
Absolutely.
So yeah, is there support for families that are just thinking about getting into this life?
Yeah, and that definitely covers this kind of perinatal period, is that kind of preconception care, fertility care, all the way through pregnancy, labor and birth, postpartum. And I even envision those early years, because it's the time period of preparation for parents, and also that transition to, oh, I have these tiny humans now that I am responsible for growing and nurturing and supporting. And those tiny humans rely on us for a really long time. So that really well supported period from preconception right through to the school age years. Yeah.
Fantastic.
All right, we're at that time. And we need to ask you to tell everyone who's listening and watching how they can find out more information, how they can access this, how they can share it. Obviously, we'll have links in the show notes and everything, but what do people need to take away right now with them?
Probably the best place to connect is on Instagram, either my account at Sarah Hardy Walsh or the Perinatal Wellbeing Network account, which is at perinatal.wellbeing.network. So you can follow us there. There's also a link there for any community-based healthcare providers, service providers, businesses who are focused on this particular time period for families' lives. There's a link in our bio there to hop onto our email list so that we can let you know what's coming up, what opportunities we have to connect, and those kinds of things. those are probably the best places to connect.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me.